All right, welcome to Module 13. Our day is going quickly, and this part is so crucial as we start to think about all of the different pieces of our programs that you've been designing, and now how do we pull them together into a culture that works well? Some people might think of culture as a kind of fuzzy topic, but I'm hoping that by the end of this module you'll be convinced that it's absolutely paramount to the success of your implementation. So we're starting to get into implementation now. The objective is to become competent in creating a new organizational culture or fixing an existing culture to support a blended learning implementation. I want to assure you that even if you look at your program right now and you can identify areas where you think you have inherited a big mess of a disheveled culture, there is hope for you. We have seen organizations through effective leadership be able to change their culture. And I'm sure you can think of at least parts of your organization where the culture is not as A+ as you would hope. And so this is all about how do you become the mavens in creating successful organizational culture that you can bring back and use at your schools to bring about all of your visions. Edgar Schein is a professor at MIT, and he says that culture is a way of working together towards common goals that has been followed so repeatedly and so successfully that people don't even have to think about it to know what to do to be successful. And so that's the definition of culture that we'll use. It's a way of working together towards common goals, and it's been done so repeatedly and so successfully that people can all autonomously do what they need to do to be successful. So I was walking through a new school that was about to open, and it was a beautiful facility. They had renovated what used to be it was like a fun center. It was a bowling alley, and it had a food court, and it had a laser tag and all sorts of things, and someone had decided to turn it into a school. So it was quite a fun facility, and they kept the food court, the original food court, with its cute lampshades and murals on the wall, and so it was a really fun facility. And they seemed to have thought of everything. They were doing a K through 12 flex implementation. So this is a bold idea, a disruptive model for mainstream core students. They knew they were doing a heavier lift, but they were ready for it. They wanted to give the students that amount of personalization and mastery-based learning. They were so excited. And they walked me through their curriculum, and they told me about all the wonderful faculty they'd hired, and they showed me this beautiful facility with all these wide open learning spaces. And then it was about a month before opening, and they said, "What are we missing? Are we ready to go?" And I just said, I think if I had 1 month to go, I'd spend a lot of it now just working on culture. Are you ready? You're going to inherit all of these students, including 11th graders, 10th graders, 6th graders that have been in the traditional system. And they're going to walk into these big, wide open learning spaces with their individual playlists and their agency, and all hell's going to break loose. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with the culture? Are you ready to work together so that everyone knows what they need to do autonomously to be successful? How are we going to help develop those processes? And so I hope it was a helpful conversation with them. As a matter of fact, after the first year, they brought me back, and they said, "We're having a real culture problem." And so it turned out that we actually revisited these steps for creating culture again. But if a culture has formed, people will autonomously do what they need to do to be successful. Have you seen how we've sort of formed a culture in here? How when you hear that music play, you walk. And I barely even have to say anything. In fact, there was one point where Jennifer turned on the music and you all started walking, and I hadn't even wanted you to yet. You autonomously were doing what you needed to do to be successful. So how did we create that culture? Let's think about the steps we used. First, we defined a problem or a task that recurs again and again. So when we were designing this workshop, we said, we're going to need to move from station to station fast, or we're never going to get through all of this. We have like 60 seconds transitions. So we designed a process. We said, well, what if we played music? And we had the 5-minute warning chime. And that was a process we decided to try. And then appointing a group to solve the problem. So I worked with Raise Your Hand Texas and with my committee, and we figured out this is what we were going to try to do. If it fails, try again. So we tried this first at an Agilix workshop in Provo, and it worked really well. So we actually got to skip this step. But had it not, a crucial step is do not disband the team. Keep that team together. The teams you're already thinking about, your heavyweight team or your functional team, do not disband them once they start implementing. They are now your culture committee. That same team is now responsible for designing the processes that will carry your work forward. And they should stay on for years if necessary to keep creating processes, testing them. If they fail, don't fire them and say, okay, I'm going to go find a different team that has a better idea. Say, let's keep working on this until we find a process that works. If they succeed, ask that same group to repeat the process every time the problem recurs. So every time we've needed to transition, we've repeated that process. Write down and promote your culture and live in a way that is consistent with your culture. Celebrate it, enshrine it into law, hand out golden stars, whatever it takes to make that culture become a metric of success for your organization so everyone knows it, you embody it, you live it yourselves, most crucially, and then you celebrate it when other people do it. As you do it, those processes and routines will be established and cemented into culture. So I actually don't think culture is such a fuzzy topic. I actually think it is just the way of getting things, tasks and problems done through routines that we follow so successfully and rituals that we follow so successfully that eventually that becomes your culture. I'm sure if you think about your families, you can identify the culture there. You might have a negative culture. It's probably because of the processes that you're using to get tasks done or problems solved in your lives. And to the extent that we can invent new processes and new routines, we can establish healthier organizations at all levels of our lives. So that's a little bit about culture.